Mario Party. It's a game of luck and chance with a bit of skill sprinkled in. You'd think it's a hard game to speedrun, and you'd be right. But in 2019, Nintendo released Mario Party Superstars, a collection of the best minigames ever created. And so, gamers had one simple question: how quickly can you beat all 100 minigames? This is the history of the Mario Party minigames world record. Subscribe to Summoning Salt.
Hi, it's me, I'm the world record holder. But how do we get to this point? First, we have to tell the whole story. Every time a Mario Party game comes out, there's one major category for it: all boards, aka you play through a single game with computers on every single available game board. And if that doesn't sound fun, you'd be right. But there's a lesser known speedrun that only 5 people have ever attempted to do before May 2023. And that category is all minigames, master difficulty. A category filled with endless RNG, impossibly difficult CPUs, and unpredictable patterns. It wasn't until famed speedrunner Squeaks started picking up the game that it started to gain some popularity. I happened to see Squeaks live at that time, and I decided it'd be funny if I went live right after him to try to beat the record he would get, which is exactly what I did. And this spawned a rivalry between me and this speedrunner. And overnight, this niche category, Mario Party Superstars All Minigames Master Difficulty, which had had 5 people ever attempt it, suddenly had dozens of people attempting it every single night. And I realized then and there, this was a race against the clock. But then everything changed when I got this run on May 26th, 2023. Let me walk you through everything that happened on this accidental run. If you ever tune into somebody attempting this speedrun, you'll mostly just see this minigame, Bowser's Big Blast. It's usually the first minigame in a long stretch of 100 minigames. The reason being is it is complete and total luck. There are 5 total plungers, and one of them is poisoned. One of them will instantly kill you, Bowser will blow up, and you will fly off the map. And the goal of the game is to not get blown up and have everybody else get blown up before you. There's no strategy to this game, but I went slightly mad while playing it and came up with a color system that helped me cope with losing. Red is dead, purple is hurtful, yellow is mellow, green is mean, and white is aight. Was it always true? No, but it allowed me to keep playing it without losing my mind. And on this particular run, white was aight, yellow was mellow for me, and green was mean for Birdo. And so I ended up beating it within a decent 1 minute 30-second time. The fastest I've ever done it is 45 seconds, but I'm not greedy. I'm just happy to move on to the next minigame, which isn't much better. Honeycomb Havoc. Now this game is RNG, but only to a keen eye. It requires a little bit of math. In this minigame, you have 2 options. Pick 1 fruit or pick 2 fruit. That's it. That's all you get to do. And if you pick the beehive, well then you're out. So you need to make sure that that doesn't happen to you. But that's not always up to you. For example, very early on, I left them with 3 fruit, and there were 3 people. So they could have each gone 1-1-1, but thankfully Yoshi hit the 2, so guaranteed Daisy would die, and I would be able to live at least 1 more round. Now, when there's 2 people behind you, you want to leave them with 5 fruit. That way, at most, they can go 2-2, and there will at least be 1 fruit left for you, which is exactly what happened here. But the reason this game is pure luck is because the final round. The final round is purely determined by how many fruit there are, and there can be as many as 11 fruit or as few as 8 fruit. And you might notice that I reset before even hitting any of the fruit. The reason being is because the computers never mess up the last round. And if you are ever stuck with a multiple of 3, you guaranteed lose it. But because I know this information, I was able to reset very quickly and go to another round, which I ended up winning because I got lucky. And 2 tries, not so bad, a bit of a time loss, but we're happy enough to have done it, and we go to our 3rd totally random minigame, Hide and Sneak. Now this one is as advertised. You hide and the seeker seeks. Give me that mushroom! I'm going mushroom! I fucking lied and shit. I'm actually behind the bush. I generally find it easier to be the hider, but I don't know the math behind it. I'm not a nerd. Maybe it's actually easier to be the seeker and you have a statistically higher chance of winning. Whatever the hell, I don't care. It feels good for me to be the hider. I was the hider, and it worked out this time, so I was happy enough to win on my first attempt and move on to the first of 3 puzzle games. Now, I haven't mentioned them to this point, but these puzzle games are some of the hardest games that Mario Party has to offer. If you were to play this against your friend, I think it would be a true test of skill. Well, except for the first one. This first game is like Puyo Puyo more than Tetris. Basically, you want to combine colors, and you want to have giant combos because the bigger the combo, the more points you get. The first to 100 points wins. Now, I've tried a bunch of different strategies, thinking through the processes, trying to figure out which colors can align the best, and the strategy that works the best for me is spamming. I just spam the blocks down as fast as I can without thinking at all. That's it. I don't try to think because the computers move too fast for me to think. And it turns out that my spamming worked. And I won that minigame on my first try because I set up big combos by just making big tall towers that luckily turn into huge combos. I don't really know what I was doing, but it worked out. And so we move on to our next minigame, Block Star. Now this minigame can be incredibly long because the master computers are really, really good at it. At its core, the goal is to combine 5 of any color by having them all connect. But you don't want to just combine color for the sake of combining color. You want to make sure you're combining colors on any arrows, because the arrows will punish your opponent depending on what direction the arrows are facing. If it's up, it'll be blocks on the top. If it's down, it'll be blocks on the bottom. So you can't just mindlessly connect blocks. You need to make sure you're connecting blocks that punish your opponent accordingly. As long as you make sure to keep your side clean by destroying all the bricks and match all the colors with the arrows, then you should win. And I won pretty quickly. I was very happy with the time to this point. And we go to our final puzzle game. And this one can be the hardest, just in pure amount of time it takes to win. Similar to the last game, we're stacking colors again. Any 5 colors will make all of the blocks disappear, or in this case, marbles. But you don't want to just make the marbles disappear without any purpose. These number blocks are the key to winning this game. The only way to get rid of them is to have them touch a marble and then have that marble reach 5 of a kind. Once it does, it will disappear. And you're basically playing ping pong back and forth, where you get the numbers from your opponent, then you send the numbers back to them, then they send it back to you, until you have some of the marbles go outside of the confines of the circle. You might notice there's some white outlines on some marbles. Well, that's because it's not within the play field. And if you have 9 marbles outside the play field, well, then you instantly lose. That's basically the game in a nutshell. My strategy is to layer as many numbers together as possible, then put a whole bunch of colors on top of them, and then try to get a huge combo. That way I'm not just getting rid of one number at a time, I'm getting rid of multiple numbers at a time. And after a few minutes, we eventually overwhelmed Birdo, and even though she had a pretty good combo she was setting up with red marbles, she was out, and we were able to move on to the next minigame. And yeah, I did dab unironically a lot through this entire world record. It's something you're going to have to deal with. I'm not proud of it, but it is what happened. And then we were on to the 1v3 minigames. As we talked about earlier, it's important to pick which side of the 1v3 minigames you want to be on, the 1 or the 3. And for this one, the Piranha Plant one, you always want to be the guy on the skateboard. It's really hard to lose if you're mashing, even slightly fast. A pretty easy win, and we're on to the next minigame. Now you might notice that I skipped one of the 1v3 minigames, but it's because I'm confident we can win on either side, and we'll get to that in a moment. The next minigame, however, is Archer Rival. A game where it's usually better to be the guy shooting the bow than the guy getting shot with the bow. There's 3 total people. You need to shoot all the yellows. You don't really care about the purples. If you shoot them all, you win. And the idea is you kind of want to walk Daisy over a little bit by just intimidating her with your arrow, and then little by little just inch over so she doesn't dodge you, kill her. You're done. You get to move on to the next minigame, which is Look Away. Now, new strategies have already been developed on how to win this one more consistently, but I have a general strategy where I spam looking left, then I look right, and then I look left one final time, and if you do it just perfectly enough, it convinces all of the CPUs to do the same exact option, and I won it on my second try. Not too shabby. Finish! Title Toss is a game where it's probably faster if you're the one, if you have a consistent strat of killing all the CPUs, but I don't. So I prefer to be the guy who's jumping over the waves, and I just time my jump every time I see Birdo's ass go flat, which is pretty easy to time as long as you're right next to the boat. So I don't think I got hit too much at all, and that's going to be a quick win, and we move on to our next 1v3 minigame, where we once again want to be part of the 3. Boulder ball, you just run straight up. I take the fall so you guys can thrive. Run! I don't mind getting crushed as long as Daisy does her job, which she does flawlessly, dodging 2 boulders, and that's another win, and we move on to the next minigame, where we're also going to be a part of the 3. For this minigame, the goal is to just ground pound until a coconut falls on the one player in the barrel. Once it does, the barrel will break, and you will have won the minigame. Their goal is to dodge your coconuts, which Birdo was pretty good at doing. And if you're playing this against humans, I think they would do a decent job dodging the coconuts. But luckily, we're not playing against humans, and with just 3 seconds left, we were able to break Birdo's barrel. That's a hard sentence to say. And we move on to our next minigame. Spotlight Swim is a game that you can easily win if you're the one person swimming around, but it's a whole lot slower, because to win it, you have to wait for the entire 30 seconds to be up, and if you catch the CPU with a flashlight, well, then you can win with 17 seconds left, like we did right here. The next minigame is Goal, where you're part of the 3 once again, and you just want to make 10 goals in a row. It's really hard as the goalkeeper to actually block the balls, and I don't even think humans would do a better job defending than Birdo is right now. The next minigame is Squared Away, where you want to be a part of the 3, and I have a strategy where I go up, left, right, up, left, and that pattern seems to work at least 80% of the time in guaranteeing the win. And not only guaranteeing the win, but guaranteeing it pretty fast. And so we're able to move on to the next minigame, which is one of the harder 1v3 minigames, Tube It or Lose It. In this minigame, your goal is to just pop all of their balloons, and my strategy was to go on the right side off the jump to force them all to the left like lambs to the slaughter, and it worked perfectly. This is a game that I failed a lot in the past, so I was happy to get it on my first try. Next up is Pogo a Go-Go. This one, you just kind of have to wait out the whole 30 seconds by jumping around on a pogo stick, and Birdo can't really do much about it. It's pretty easy to stay alive. I've played it as the 1 before, but it's very hard to get the CPU to die. It's worth noting that as long as one of the people in a 1v3 minigame survive, the entire team wins. So I don't even have to be the person who wins. All I need to do is be on the team. The next minigame is super easy. It's Tackle Takedown, where you just run Birdo into a corner, and like Tom Brady, she's not very athletic out of the pocket, so she instantly gets sacked, and that's on to our next minigame. The next minigame is Skewer Scurry, where you just want to hide from these giant metal spiky dildos, and if you get hit by them, you instantly die, so make sure you're hiding behind a giant metal platform. That would help. Although my teammates die, I lived, so we all win, and that's the end of our 1v3 minigames. And at this point, my run was going really well. I had already saved 12 minutes off my personal best, which meant I was on sub 2-hour pace. And there's only 2 minigames left that I had to specifically select. Now, although this looks like a 1v3 minigame, and it technically is 1 versus 3, it's considered a money minigame, because even if you are part of the 3 and you lose, you don't really lose because you win all the money you got in Mario Party. It doesn't actually matter in the minigame speedrun. All that matters is that you end up with more coins than your opponents, which is very easy to do if you're driving the boat in this game. I do the same thing for Money Belt, which again is 1 versus 3, and my goal is to end up with more money than them. If they get more money, I lose. If I get more money, I win. And Money Belts can be a little bit harder. I missed the money bag there, but it's not that big of a deal because there's so many coins for me to get that they can't get because I get first dibs on it. This minigame is mostly to teach kids that trickle-down economics doesn't work, and even though I missed both the money bags, it doesn't matter because I was on the top platform, I got enough coins, and I win all the minigames that I needed to select through. At this point, I've completed 21 minigames, and it's time to do all the random minigames. The first minigame's really easy. You just want your piranha plant to be under the water. The more water it gets, the larger it grows. It's pretty hard to lose this one. The CPU aren't very good at it. Although the master difficulty can be brutal, and I'll show you some of the minigames that are coming up, some of them they're just kind of bad at, and this is one of those minigames. So I win pretty easily, and it's on to the next one. It's worth reiterating that I'm spamming A after every minigame to guarantee a random minigame as fast as possible. And clicking random is a lot faster than if you were to cycle through minigame by minigame by minigame. This is another coin minigame where the goal is to get more coins than your opponents. And it can be kind of luck-based because sometimes he just likes to throw money bags on people, but it worked out this time because he threw a money bag on me, which I think just means I was lucky that day. Our pace is good, but it's not even world record pace right now. We're still technically on just barely sub 2-hour pace, so no need to get too thrilled. For some weird reason, I kept getting money games back to back to back, and this was no exception. I got another money minigame here, which is called Castaways, which can be the most luck-based, but not in the way you think. The luck all comes down to which position you are in. You see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 total positions, and the best one is actually being the 4th on the very far right. Reason being is controllers are kind of finicky, so the easiest distance to throw your hand is the farthest distance away. And if you're on the far right, well then you get first dibs at all of those chests. I was a little bit nervous at this point because my run had been going so well, but I have a texture lineup where I wait for the chest to just pass the island's corner, and the moment it does, I release my line. I think I was a little nervous on this minigame because I missed a couple times, but it ended up working out because the CPU didn't do too well, and I ended up taking the W. The next minigame is super easy. Again, sometimes the computers are bad, and this is one of the clear examples of how they're bad. If you look at all the computers in this minigame, they're guaranteed to fall at least once. Birdo there, Yoshi, and Daisy almost all at the same time. If you're playing against humans, this game is total luck because there's a long path and a short path, and you don't know until you've already gone up the path, and you can't really go backwards, so luckily the computers all fall, and it's not RNG anymore. And with that win, we were a quarter of the way through all our minigames, and the next minigame is a really tough one. The goal of this minigame is to turn the flashlight onto the chain chomp at the very last second. And although I got it within 0.8 yards, Yoshi beat me with 0.6 yards. Now this is a point where there was a lot of time to save against the world record because the world record failed about 8 times on this minigame. So I thought I would save a lot of time here. Until I failed again. And again. And again. And again. And again. And I ended up failing as many times as the world record did. Luckily for me, I eventually got it down because the computers didn't do too well, and well, I did good enough. 0.3 yards. Sometimes they'll get 0.1 yards, and that can be brutal. But it was on to the next minigame. Now this game can be very tough. It looks simple on the surface. You just click R and L and you want to do full and complete pumps, so you look at the meter below to judge how good your pumps are. My only strategy is really holding R before the minigame starts to buffer my input. But I think I was a little bit nervous because my run was going pretty well to this point, so I ended up losing on my first attempts. I picked it up pretty quickly on my second attempt, and it was on to our next minigame, which is my favorite minigame in Mario Party Superstars, Pokey Pummel. You just press A, and as someone who had the world record in this minigame, I'm pretty damn good at doing that. After the quick dub, we move on to a minigame where the goal is to shoot our opponent's backside. We basically want to give them back shots until they explode, and we want to make sure they don't give us back shots so we don't explode. This one started off pretty rough because Birdo was giving it to me hard, but I ended up getting kind of lucky because Birdo destroyed Yoshi and Yoshi destroyed Daisy, and then it was left to a 1v1, which I almost thought I was going to lose because I paused right here to reset, but ended up getting pretty lucky, and it worked out. I dodged all of Birdo's shots, I shot her enough times, and it was on to the next minigame. The sports games in Mario Party can be some of the most difficult. You're put into a 2v2 situation which you don't get a lot of control over because you don't get to control your teammate. Luckily, I had a wide open net and I didn't miss my shot, and Yoshi won the face-off, which meant that I get to do a simple strat of just stalling the clock. I actually learned this strategy from Easy Speezy, who is someone who made a video about every single minigame that I watched thoroughly, and it helped me learn how to win some of the minigames. Yee-hee. Yee-hee. Wait, which way are we going? Which way? Oh, we're spinning together now. We're spinning together now. So after you wait out for an entire minute, you get the win, and it's on to the next minigame. Rockin' Raceway gave me a lot of trouble early on. The goal is to press R and L as fast as you can, but there's a catch because you have a stamina bar in the corner, and if you run out of carrots, well then you'll spin out and you'll go really slow. The key is when you come up to these big medallions, the gold gives you perma stamina and the purple gives you no stamina. So you want to make sure you time it right, and if you do, well then you get a pretty fast speed boost to the next medallion, and you want to make sure you time it so you just barely dodge the purple, but you get the gold. If you do that right, well then you should win. After that dub, it was off to my second favorite minigame, Mecha Marathon, where you're trying to mash A and B together as fast as possible. I think it was the adrenaline, but I ended up breaking the record on my Switch for the fastest I've ever mashed on that minigame. Okay, I went overkill. That wasted a bit of time. I went overkill. I just got excited. This minigame's probably the easiest of the master difficulty minigames. The controls are inverted, which is supposed to mess you up a little bit, but I think the CPU are a lot more confused than you are, so you're able to just kind of jump on people's heads, and if you get like 5, you should guarantee a win. But I figured I'd go a little more and get at least 8 just to secure it. This minigame is mostly luck-based. There's 11 total Goomba, and whoever has the most Goomba painted their team's color wins. That's how the game works. And although the first 30 seconds is kind of fun to shoot around, the only thing that actually matters is the last second. And luckily for me, in the last second, we got enough pink to get the win on the first try. In the old version of Handcar Havoc, it was really easy to fall off while mashing through, but on the new one, it's really easy. So as long as you mash at a decent enough pace and you don't point in the opposite direction of where you're supposed to, you'll beat this one without too much trouble. In this minigame, Bowser throws a giant spiky ball at you, and the goal is to just dodge the spiky ball. Eventually, Bowser gets frustrated that nobody's dying from a spiky ball, so he throws another spiky ball, and then another spiky ball. It can get a little bit hairy, but as long as you don't die before the opponents die, you should win. And I got really close to dying here, but luckily Daisy saved the day for us. Here's another coin minigame where you want more coins than the opposing team. It can be a little bit luck-based because your teammate sometimes just sucks, but my strat is just to stand on the opposite side of everybody else to guarantee that I get the coins near me faster than anybody else. I feel like Yoshi didn't do jack shit right there. Okay, I need to include this. For whatever reason, at the end of this minigame, they have an unskippable cutscene where everybody fucking dies from a vicious tornado in the desert and is never seen again. What happened to the devs of that game? The next minigame is pretty easy if you practice it enough. It's hot rope jump. It's jump rope. You basically jump over the rope. And the best strategy for this one is to use short hops. There's different lengths and heights that you can jump in. And you can see here towards jump 12 where it gets a little faster. I start using the shorter jump. That way I'm ready to jump quicker than the people who are doing the full jumps. And finally, after 58 jumps, I'm the only one left. And we're on to the next minigame. Bowser's Facelift. I have to say, this is probably the hardest minigame of all 100 minigames. Now, I've seen some speedrunners since use some new age strats where they overlay the face in the middle on their face on OBS to match it perfectly, but I don't use any of those strats. I do this the old-fashioned way, where I just match it up by eyeballing it. But it is incredibly, incredibly hard. It's very easy to look at this game as a viewer and say, oh, the cheeks should be a little bit higher, or they should be a little more in. That nose is too high up. But when you're playing this minigame, if you go on your Switch and try to play this minigame right now, I promise you, you will not get higher than 90 on your first try. I promise you. What? And I, like you guys, failed to get over 90 on my first try. I'm stuck with 88, although I thought I did it almost perfectly, and it's on to our next attempt. I've played this game over 100 times, and there's only a few faces that Bowser actually makes, and some are easier than others, and this is one of the easier faces. So I end up getting a 95, which is only good enough to tie for first with two of the other computers, but still good enough for the W, so we're on to the next minigame. The goal of this minigame is to be the most in focus for the picture that's about to be taken, so the general strategy is to get out of the way of everybody's butt, and then jump in at the very last second to hopefully get the best shot possible. Which ended up looking like Birdo farting and me sneezing, but it was enough for us to tie for the win, and we were on to our next minigame. This minigame's pretty easy with a bit of practice. There's 4 different pitches that the computers will use. One is a slow lob, one is a normal pitch, one is a fastball, and one is a screwball. You can tell which pitch it's going to be based off how long they wait to throw the ball. The longest one is the screwball, the second is the fastball, the third is the normal, and the fourth is the lob. At this point, I realized I was playing well because not only did I win that minigame, I got a new record, which I had never gotten before. This next minigame didn't go so well for me. You can either end up in the driver's position or the wing flapper position. One's focused on speed, the other is focused on where you're going. I started off being the person who was driving the ship, but I'm not the best driver in the world, and I got caught with a couple of cannonballs, so I decided to restart, and luckily I was put in the back where I was able to just flap my wings as peacefully as I would like, and I let Yoshi do all the work to get the W. This is one of the minigames that gave Nintendo a lawsuit about kids burning holes in their hands because they were trying to spin their joystick, and also the only 1v3 minigame that we skipped, because all you have to do is spin the control stick. And I don't mind burning my hand as an adult, so I'll just take the W, thank you very much, and we're on to the next one. This minigame, you press B to build up a snowball. The more you walk around, the bigger it gets, and then you can press A to release the snowball. This was actually one of the fastest I've ever beaten it in because I got an early kill on Daisy, and then Yoshi killed Birdo for me, and so then I was able to just kill Yoshi. I generally like most of the minigames in Mario Party Superstars, but some of them were a bit ruined by the new physics engine. So back in the day, there was a lot of technique on this minigame about doing perfectly timed short hops and then kicking in the air. Nowadays, it's about good enough to just stand there and punch in place. Hop in, Toad and Toadette. And it's on to the next minigame where we're trying to move this shell around the board to reveal the art that's behind it. And we want to make sure we get all the corners first. Bottom right, bottom left, top right. And then we just try to do a little bit of an S pattern here in the middle. And without too much trouble, we get a win there. In this minigame, you hold A, and then you just tap left, and you go round and round in a circle. And luckily, because I was so far ahead of the pack, nobody could really bump me or bother me. And because of that, we got it first try, and we were on to one of the hardest minigames in the run. This game's closer to foosball than it is to air hockey, but the basic goal is that you and your teammate are trying to score 3 times before your opponent scores 3 times on you. The reason it's so hard is because sometimes the Koopa shell will sneak between you and the wall no matter how far down or up you hold. And although this minigame has ruined many runs for me by taking up 5+ minutes of my time, I ended up winning on my first try, scoring 3 goals to 1. This is basically a battle royale where you want to punch people onto the numbers that are the lowest because that means it's about to open up, and you want to stand on the numbers that are the highest, that way you can live longer. And with a single punch, I can knock Daisy into the ravine, and we can move on to the next minigame, which is the most fun minigame in Mario Party Superstars. It's a 2v2 minigame that has a lot of skill in it. It's actually a way better volleyball game than any of the Wii Sports Resorts ones, and I like to call myself the French Wall in this game. The French Wall has arrived! That was more like an angry German, but I think you get the point. You play until somebody reaches 7 points. There's no time limit on the game, and my general strategy is to hit the ball as far to the left as possible so it hits the ground, or jump to intercept their balls and spike it back onto their side, which I got quite a few times in this run, which ended up making this volleyball segment a whole lot faster. GG though. After volleyball is one of the funniest minigames, Pushy Penguins. The goal is to dodge the penguins who are trying to run you off the edge, but the one thing that they don't have the CPU programmed to do is to dodge me. And I am really good at pushing the CPUs off the edge. It'll never get old. It'll never get old. We get a nice time save there, and it's on to the next minigame where I forget the button to swim. Okay, it is A to swim. Let's remember that. And after figuring it out, we get a quick win, and it's on to the next one. In this minigame, you're looking for a mushroom to make you giant. After getting the giant mushroom, you want to knock everybody out. I'm not really good at knocking people out. Apparently, there's some strategy to get it on the first cycle, but we get it on the second cycle, which I was happy enough with, and it's on to the next one. I think the duel minigames are some of the harder minigames in this speedrun, and this one's no exception. My general strategy is to pause right before the electricity shows up to know which direction I have to go to dodge it, but it doesn't end up working out for my first few runs, so I have to reset a couple times. Bit of a fucky-wucky. It's okay, though. I think I lost. Oh, man. All right, we lose a clean minute here. All right, there we go. Definitely like a minute 30 time loss. This next minigame would actually be really competitive if I was going up against humans with a brain, but I'm going up against computers. So all I do is I look where Yoshi hits, and then I go to the exact same button and click it right after Yoshi. And that was enough to get us the W, and we were on to the next minigame. Parasol Plummet is a coin minigame where you want the most coins possible, but it can be a little bit luck-based. It's not inherently an RNG minigame because you do control how you fly, but if you notice on the right side, there were no money bags. And because of that, I ended up getting a whole lot less money than Daisy, who was on the left side with a whole lot of money bags. I ended up switching over to the left side, mostly because of superstition, and winning the minigame, and it was on to the next one. In this minigame, you just count the Goombas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. And that was my final count, which I was a little nervous I was wrong about because Yoshi and Daisy had different guesses, but it turns out the AI are just kind of bad at counting. This next minigame is Sneak and Snore, where you're trying to sneak all the way to the button to open the door and then escape before the chain chomp kills you. What? Oh my god, I almost did it again. Oof. Not too bad, not too bad. And in this minigame, you count bob-ombs, but you have to make sure to remove the bob-ombs that blow up while you're counting. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 19 right now. Okay, 18. Let's count again, though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the right. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 18. Why am I the only one who did 18? Oh, fuckers. Book Squirm, I think, is objectively the best minigame that Mario Party has ever made. It's just well balanced, fun to play, and there's a generally high skill ceiling, so people who are really good at it perform better than people who aren't as good at it. Scariest ones are moon shapes. If you're ever in the front, you can run against the front and you'll live no matter what, which is more of a gimmick than anything. Doesn't really help too much. I'd rather be on my own at the start. Try to stay away from other people's portraits while we can. Me and Yoshi end up getting crushed at the same time, but it doesn't matter because we end up tying for first, and that counts as a win in the speedrun. In this minigame, you have 2 lives, and you want to kill all of the opponents before you die. My strategy is holding the R button because it lets you strafe around, and I try to do a pop and swing on Daisy, but I end up actually missing. Daisy takes care of Yoshi, and then we enter a 1v1 where we just keep shooting each other like I imagine war was like in the 1500s. Just 2 opposing armies on opposite sides shooting each other with muskets until one army falls. And that army in this case was Daisy. Thank you for falling, and we were on to our next minigame. For a long time, this duel minigame stumped me. The goal is to get to the end as fast as possible, and there are certain paths that are dead ends, and there are certain paths that are the right path. But I came up with a strat the day before the speedrun where I stood at the entry of the gate rather than running against the railing. And it's a way to almost guarantee skipping an entire cycle by going from one entrance into another right before it turns. And it was enough to get me the win, and on to the next minigame. This minigame is a lot harder than it looks. My mashing skills were able to get me a good head start, but the movement's a little bit weird here because the AI doesn't move on its own. It actually just mimics whatever you do 0.5 seconds after you do it. So it makes a little bit of latency in all of your turns and oftentimes can make you run into walls where you don't mean to run into walls. I ended up practicing a strategy where I flicked my head around a few times, and that was enough to get me the double my first try, and we were on to the next one. In this minigame, you just tap left and right. The AI will copy all of your movements, so it's not too hard to do. It's actually really hard to lose this minigame. If you go fast enough, you can actually go through the thwomp before it crushes you, but I was a little bit slow here. At this point in the run, I was kind of nervous because I knew I was on world record pace, and it was getting in my head a little bit. But it didn't matter that I was crushed because we were still fast enough to beat the CPU, and it was on to the next minigame. We got 2 back-to-back money minigames, which aren't too hard to win. You just want to get the most money possible, which we did, and we were on to the ice cream minigame. Now, this one can be kind of tough. You want to wait for a shadow to pop up, and when it does, you want to stand under it so you can get an ice cream scoop. But my eyes are getting kind of bad, so I kind of struggle to find where the shadows are before the computers do, and oftentimes it feels like the computers run to the spot of the shadow before it even pops up on the screen. So my new strategy is just running to an open space, assuming a shadow will pop up there, and never being too flat on my feet, which worked out this time, and I tied with Daisy and Berto for the biggest ice cream scoops, and we were on to one of the more challenging minigames. The goal is to get as high as possible, and you're trying to jump around these paratroopers. If you jump into them, it'll bonk you down, and of course, if you miss them, then you'll fly all the way down to the cloud saving point. I got pretty good at this minigame by playing with friends, but I think I was just really nervous at this point, knowing how close I was to the world record, and so uncharacteristically, I failed this minigame on my first try. I beat it on my second try, but I started to get a little nervous that I might lose the world record because of how nervous I actually was. Luckily for me, the next minigame was one I was really confident in, where you just try to spin around on a snowboard. In fact, I was so confident in it, I broke my record by a long shot. I think the game could sense I was nervous, so it gave me one of the easiest minigames where you fly in the air and you try to collect all the coins, and it's really hard to not get all the coins because you get 4 total tries amongst you and your teammate. Good fucking run, Berto. Damn, that was actually, like, synchronized dancing. And this continues my theory where the game could sense I was nervous because it gave me another easy money minigame where you just look at the x-ray machine and then open all the boxes with money in them. 1, 2, 5 in a row. 3, 4, 5. Skip, skip, skip. Coin. 1, 2, 3, 4. Shy Guy Says is a test of patience. I've always found this minigame a little bit weird because you're playing against computers who inherently know what color flag is going to be lifted, but they pretend to have eyes and to get deceived. Like a couple of times you'll notice Shy Guy will fake it and they'll do the fake out option. But you're not getting faked out. You're a computer. You're inputting the fake out. I don't know why this gets to me, but it does. Either way, it doesn't get to me in the run, and I ended up beating on my first try, and we were even closer to the world record. In this 2v2 minigame, you're trying to make cakes with strawberries on top, and I like being part of the cake side, and luckily I was on the cake side. So I get to put the first base down and wait for my teammate to throw up a strawberry, and we worked very well in sync, ended up getting 11 cakes total, which was enough to get the W, and move on to the next minigame, where we are just trying to avoid Bowser and his flaming breath in fast, spiky body. As long as you stand behind Bowser, it's pretty hard to die, and we get out of there without too much trouble. In this minigame, you want to pop the opponent's balloons before your balloon gets popped, and my strategy is to back up at the very start because they won't go for you if you're too far away. And then I try to pop Birdo's balloon rather than going for a tie by bumping each other because I don't want to waste too much time. And after enough time, I eventually get it, saving 14 seconds by not going for a draw. This might be one of the most iconic Mario Party minigames. It was in the original Mario Party, Mushroom Mix-Up, where Toad will lift up a color and then you have to go to said color. The general way to win in the new version is by ground pounding one of the opponents right before they need to go to a specific color, so they are stuck like a pancake in place, and then you go to the color that Toad lifts up. In the old version, you were able to body block people, kind of like we did with Birdo right there, but it's really hard to do consistently in the new game. Usually this minigame takes me a couple of tries, but for whatever reason luck was on my side, I got this ground pound on Yoshi, and I beat it on my first try. This next minigame is really fun. I practiced it a bunch. You're basically trying to go as fast as you can while dodging all these spiky shells, and if you go the fastest, you win. You press A to accelerate, so I spam it at the start, and then I just dodge all of the spikes. I end up winning by 1 centisecond, but a win's a win, and we're on to our final sports minigame, soccer. Now, the soccer one can be kind of hard, mostly because your teammate will never pass the ball to you. So you have a decision to either be a good teammate and try to give open shots to them, or be a selfish player and get shots of your own. I don't know if I have the best strategy, but I like getting the ball early, dodging the attacks from my opponents, and then passing it over to Birdo to do the shot. There you go, Birdo. Good shit. Solo carry. And after a bit of time, we get the win. I don't know how this minigame made it into a best of game, but basically you dodge these cannonballs, and it's really easy to do as long as you jump before they hit the ship, which isn't too hard to time. I've never even seen CPU die on this minigame, especially Master CPU, and that holds up true here. No one dies. We move on to the next. Dungeon Duos is an amazing 3-part minigame. The first part where you're mashing to get your teammate through the obstacles, the second part where you're trying to jump through the correct pipe, and the third part where you're trying to blow up a hot air balloon to escape, which I don't really think is how hot air balloons work, but either way, me and Daisy successfully win, and we get to move on to the next one. In this minigame, the goal is to deliver as many letters as possible to the USPS worker before they self-destruct, and the only thing to note is that at 15 seconds and 5 seconds, a love letter will appear, which is worth more points than a regular letter. So I just make sure to have nothing in my hands at those time intervals, and then I give those letters to the postal worker. Really good score, actually. 12 is high. This minigame can be a struggle. There are 3 Monty Mole CPUs that are trying to hit you guys with a hammer while you guys are acting as the moles, and whoever spends the most time outside is the winner. There's a couple of key strategies, like the same mole will never try to hit you twice, so if they swing the hammer at you, then it will have to be another mole who goes for you. It can feel natural to want to go as far away as possible from the last hole you came out of, but it's actually faster to just go between 2 holes right next to each other, as long as the mole next to you has already swung. That way, another mole has to come from across the map. Wow! Alright, that was unlucky. Daisy got 21. I swear I've never seen 21 in my life. That is the highest I've ever seen. But after a quick reset, I finally win it on my 3rd attempt by getting a score of over 20 seconds. Nice. Very good score for me. This is another duel minigame that takes a bit of time. Basically dodge the giant swinging spiky minute hand. I got kind of lucky on this minigame because most of the time the CPU live until about 30 jumps, But in this case, they died pretty early, and so we got to save some time, and we got to go on to the next one. This is the minigame where things started to crash down on me. Normally, all you have to do is dodge the asteroids, and because it's a side-scroller, it's really easy to do. You can do it at your own pace, and as long as you burst forward at the very end, you'll always beat the CPU. It's not like a weird tiebreaker. But I hit an asteroid because I got really nervous. We gotta restart. All right, we lost about 30 seconds there, maybe 20. Finish. It's okay, though. I ended up beating it on my second try, but then something else happened. My live split crashed. You see that timer in the top right corner of the screen? It's frozen. And it's not for any good reason, like I misclicked. It's for a really bad reason, like it crashed on my browser, and it won't work anymore for the rest of the day. I have to restart live split as a whole, which I definitely can't do while I'm in the middle of a run that's on world record pace. Now I end up winning on Trace Race with a score slightly lower than usual, but a win's a win. But the timer going off kind of tilted me. I don't know, I felt like I needed to see if I was on pace. I needed to make sure that I was going to win. I didn't want to do all this work and then not even know if I was the world record holder. And I think that got to me on Slot Car Derby, because I ended up losing on my first try. I quickly retried and I got a better map that's a little bit shorter, and I won quickly enough, but I couldn't get it out of my head how unlucky it was that the timer stopped. Now the next mini game, you're basically trying to jump from vine to vine like Tarzan. You can see in the middle who's in the lead, you or the CPU. And I was crushing Yoshi at the start. But for whatever reason, I think I got tilted again, and it ended up being a tie, but Yoshi had a slightly better jump at the very end and beat me on my first try. I won on my second try, no problem, but I realized something. The timer going out was more of a blessing than a curse. I had been so focused on whether this was the world record and I was going to beat it and I was going to get everything done that I wasn't at peace with what the task was at hand. I was focused on what the result would be if I succeeded in the task, not what I had to do. And what I had to do was get the job done. Finish the final 13 mini games and get the fucking world record. But you don't do that 13 mini games at a time. You do that one mini game at a time. I just gotta focus on the run though, you know? Can't be too stressed about the timer right now. I get lucky with a spiny minigame and all the computers die instantly, which saves me a good amount of time, and we move on to the final RNG minigame. A game that could lose me the run. You basically want to go through a door that brings you to a lower floor, and you go lower floor by lower floor until you're through the final door. If that doesn't make sense? Well, then I don't know what to tell you, man. That's how the game works. Lucky enough for me, though, I got it on my second try because I noticed all the other doors had already been gone through, and we had just 10 minigames that separated me and a big old W. I'll keep it a buck. In the past, I've cheated on this minigame by looking at chat and seeing what they put in as a result, but since I realized this had a chance of being the world record, I didn't want to do that. So I repeated the entire top row over and over and over again while staring at the bottom row to see what it was, doing what I saw with my eyes, and then doing what my mouth was saying to fill in the 9 items, and then I realized, well, the banana's got to go there, and that's how I do memory. Luckily for me, the computers never get all 10 right, so even if I fucked one up, I'd probably be fine, but I still got all of them right. Next up is Crazy Cutter, where I felt really at peace at this point. I realized, record or not, I've been playing super well. I was very happy with my performance as a whole, and that I should be proud of myself for getting this far. From a week ago, taking 5+ hours to beat all 100 minigames, to now being on pace for a world record felt good. So I got one of my best scores ever in Crazy Cutter on the Shy Guy. I instantly won the next minigame by mostly just working with myself, drawing circles around the toad. And then I got to play the golf minigame, which is one of my favorite in all of Mario Party. Here's a little tip, by the way. If you line up the point of your arrow with the top gold ball on the flagpole, it'll always perfectly be on line. You don't have to factor in wind or anything else. All you have to know is how strong you're swinging, and the rest is really easy. Eats a pizza. I'm a world record masher, so this wasn't too tough for me. As long as I leave no crumbs, I should be able to beat it with quite a few seconds left on the clock, and I actually beat it faster than I ever have before with 7 seconds left on the clock. With only 5 minigames left, there was a very fine line between world record and no world record. And bear in mind, live split broke, so I had no clue how close I was to the world record at this point. But during this entire minigame, I was thinking about squeaks. Yeah, That speedrunner, Squeaks. Although we started out as rivals, we've been really helpful with each other to try to give each other strats to push each other further and faster than we've ever gone in this speedrun. I hit him up almost every single day, and he hits me up to talk about some new ideas we have or to talk about some of the ideas some other people have had that we've seen. And one of the things he told me on this one is, hey, you're not trying to beat your own record, you're just trying to beat the CPUs. Slow it down. And although I failed that several times in the past because I keep trying to go Mach 5, I listened to Squeaks. And it worked out, and I got it on my first try. After me and Daisy picked Apple's OSHA style, it was over to bumper balls. 3 more games.
Start.
This one could be tough. And I almost instantly lost.
Start.
I started to feel a twinge of disappointment when I failed my first bumper balls, but then a miracle happened. And I beat it on my second try with 48 seconds left on the clock, which is incredibly fast. It's here at the penultimate minigame where I tell you I've been kind of lying. There is one final, somewhat RNG minigame. Now you do get to control this minigame, but not every aspect of it. Basically, you want to capture as many Goombas as possible, and gold Goombas are worth more. And my first drop was amazing. I got a gold Goomba and a few regular Goombas. But Yoshi got a score I have never seen before. 10 total Goombas. So I ended up losing on my first try, but I win after a few more tries. Okay, I should be good. I think I got 8 or 9. There we go. I don't know what our last minigame is. And we move over to the final minigame, Burn Style. It's basically jump rope, but with higher stakes. And at this point, my heart was beating out of my chest. I checked my Fitbit after. I think my heart rate was at 140 during this entire minigame. And the timer officially stops when you get the final 100th stamp on the screen, like I call out right here. All right, the time should end. Not yet. Now. And at this point, I genuinely had no clue whether I broke the world record or not. My live split broke. I don't know if I failed to break it, if I broke it by a second, a minute, 5 minutes. I have no idea. But after a little bit of retiming and a little bit of research, I found out that not only did I break the world record, but I was the first person ever to get a sub 1 hour, 50-minute run with a final time of 1 hour, 49 minutes, and 18 seconds. And with that, I was the world record holder and officially the best Mario Party Superstars player in the world. And there's only one thing left to do. Officially announce my retirement from Mario Party Superstars speedrunning. I'm out. All right, I'm out on top, baby. Got the world record. World's first sub 1 hour, 50-minute run. I don't need to play this game anymore. I'm sure that there are people who are going to beat my run very soon and then beat their run and beat their run and beat their run, but I don't need to be a part of it anymore. That game tilts the shit out of me. Chat is miserable at backseating during the entirety of it, even against a world record holder, so I'm going to move on to some bigger ideas. Specifically, I'm thinking about bringing some of the best Mario Party speedrunners together and having 4 humans race all 100 minigames to see who can get the most wins. Sounds a little more fun than racing against computers to me. So that'll come in the next couple of weeks, but until then, that's how I accidentally got the world record. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see y'all later. Goodbye! Have a good one, guys. See you later. Have a good one. Thanks for watching. How the fuck did somebody already beat it?